right, Philadelphia sports fans, Nikki C's back again. You can tell by the title and the background that I'm going to talk a little bit about the Sixers and the Deshaun Watson suspension. All right, so let's dive right into it. So a couple weeks ago, I was watching Run It Back Philly talk about the Sixers. In one of his vids, he brought up the subject, and shout out to Run It Back Philly. He's brought out the idea that Daryl Morey may not be bringing a backup center for the specific reason of trying to force Doc Rivers to play some of the younger guys, which explains why the Sixers haven't made a whole lot of moves this offseason. I mean, we traded Danny Green and our first-round pick for DeAnthony Melton to the Memphis Grizzlies. We got P.J. Tucker, Daniel House. But outside that, we haven't done much. We haven't really done anything. We've been kind of quiet outside of that through this NBA offseason. And the more I thought about it, about what Run It Back Philly was saying and suggesting that, hey, Daryl Morey might be trying to force Doc Rivers to play some of the guys he brought in. Thinking about it, good possibility that's the case because we had an opportunity to go for a backup center. We could have gotten one by now. We could have gotten a DeMarcus Cousins. We maybe could have gotten Andre Drummond back if we pushed for it, but obviously we didn't. We could have maybe tried to bring Dwight Howard back for a second stint, but we didn't. It doesn't look like we're doing that at all. But the more I think about considering, we could have at least tried to make a move, maybe gotten one of those three guys, most likely DeMarcus Cousins, but we didn't do it. And thinking there's a good possibility that's what Daryl Morey's trying to do because he knows Doc Rivers, he knows his rotations. He usually plays veterans. The only time he replaces younger guys that are unproven is when he's forced to. Because Tyrese Maxey, yes, as good as Tyrese Maxey was for us last year, let's face it, he was getting playing time because Ben Simmons wasn't there. If Ben Simmons was there, he wouldn't have gotten that playing time. And Doc Rivers, you noticed Isaiah Joe, who's had a couple good performances in the Summer League. Granted, it is the Summer League. Majority of Summer League players don't play in the NBA. I get that. But he was at least showing he's at least worthy of some more playing time during the regular season. Now, does that mean that Isaiah Joe is going to come in and be an all-star? Is going to be a starter? No. But he's at least worthy to get some playing time off the bench. But Doc Rivers doesn't play him. You could say that Paul Reed deserves some more playing time as a backup center. But you notice he was rarely played last year, only when we were forced to. It's the only time Doc Rivers played him. And looking at this, that Doc Rivers doesn't play the guys like the Isaiah Joes, the Paul Reeds, the Charles Bassies, to name a few, it's a good chance that Daryl Morey's sitting there going, hey, I drafted these guys. You got to play some of them. You're only playing Tyrese because Ben Simmons wasn't there to play. Because of the whole saga with him. That's the only reason you played Tyrese Maxey. And when you did play him, look how well it worked out. You should do more of that. That could very well be Daryl Morey's mindset going into next season as to why he's not pushing for that backup center. Because if he was pushing, he could have got one by now. He could have got a veteran backup center if he was pushing for it. So, yeah, I do think maybe that's what he's doing. And I hope that's what Daryl Morey's doing personally. Because before I switch gears, I'd say, yes, it does. I say it does seem like that's what Daryl Morey's doing. That's the way it comes across. And I personally hope that's what he's going to do. Because we look at guys like Paul Reed, Charles Bassey, Isaiah Joe, even if they're not going to come in, even if none of these guys make an all-star game, even if none of these guys start, we look at our roster. I still think these guys can definitely be better if given the opportunity than George Niang, than Shake Milton, than Fort King Korkmaz, just to name a few guys on our bench, that these guys could at least be better than as bench guys if given the opportunity. But the point being is that I see some potential for some of the guys that aren't getting playing time to be better than some of the bench guys we got. Point is, I hope that's what Daryl Morey's doing, and I hope it works out. You guys can let me know in the comment section how you feel. Do you think Daryl Morey's trying to force Doc Rivers to play some of the younger guys that aren't getting playing time during the regular season, or if they are, they're getting very little playing time? You can let me know in the comments section if you think that's the case and if you think they should do that. I'll be glad to read what you guys have to say in the comment section. So now I'm going to switch gears. You can tell by the new background screen with the NFL logo what I'm going to talk about. Deshaun Watson's 6-game suspension. Oh, just thinking about this one. Starting to get to me. So now when this whole Deshaun Watson throughout this saga, I made a couple videos of relation to all the Eagles rumors with Deshaun Watson about how, look, I said on several of those vids, look, they're not going to trade for him. Just let it go. Stop talking about it. And so that's when I did talk about that, but I didn't talk about the Deshaun Watson situation itself, mainly because I wanted to wait to see what was going to happen. I wanted to see more details come out because I didn't want to automatically assume, as soon as the accusations started to come out, that he was guilty, because I know there are women out there that will come out and fabricate stories. We know what's happened before. Remember Brian Banks? Just to name one example. So I didn't want to automatically assume he was guilty. At the same time, I didn't want to assume he was innocent either, which is why I didn't say anything about it through YouTube, and I didn't tweet about it through most of this time. But now we're at that point where it seems like every time we turn around, more details are coming out. Is that old saying, where there's smoke, there's fire? It's like, okay, you can only have so many people come out. And even though there are some people out there that do make bogus claims of sexual harassment, sexual assault, domestic violence, yes, bogus claims do happen, but there can only be so many people and so many stories that come out before it's like, okay, where there's smoke, there's fire. Something's going on here. Because it seems like with Deshaun Watson, every time he's in the news, it's always some new details. It's like, there can only be so many details before it's like, okay, you're doing something wrong with the way you treat women. If there's so many of these women coming forward saying this, that, all these serious claims, you're doing something wrong. So obviously something's not right. And he's getting a 6-game suspension for that? Just 6? I mean, you're talking about other players who have done less severe things, who should be punished, but are getting some more severe punishment than Deshaun Watson. Like, take Calvin Ridley. He's going to be suspended for an entire season because he was betting on NFL games while he was away from the team during the 2021 season. And I got a whole list. I looked this up on the New York Times. I'll put the link to the article in the description box. I'm going to read off some of the suspensions, like season-long suspensions. But back to Calvin Ridley for a second. So he's getting a whole season suspension for betting on games, which I know that betting on games, it can be hurtful to the league's image, especially when you got a player that could create an ethics problem with a player betting on games, where you could be talking about them potentially, especially if they're betting on games they're in, trying to intentionally drop balls or trying to intimidate the quarterback and to give them more catches to cover a certain bet or whatever the case may be. And that can create a bit of an image problem right there. So I get that, yes, they got to give him some suspension, but you're giving Calvin Ridley a whole season for betting on NFL games. Not sure if he was betting on any Falcons games or not, but you're giving him a whole season. Meanwhile, Deshaun Watson, who has all these different allegations of sexual misconduct with women, is only getting 6 games. I mean, this is a long history too. This isn't just the Deshaun Watson situation. The NFL has a serious problem with the way they actually come out against players in domestic violence or sexual assault, because they oftentimes give these players slaps on the wrist in comparison to other players who have done less severe, who get bigger suspensions. Let's go through some of the recent history. Remember Josh Brown? He only got a 6-game suspension initially for his domestic violence deals. He was initially suspended 1 game in 2016, when by that point he had a documented history of domestic abuse, but he only got a 1 game suspension there. Then for 2017, he got, 6 game suspension? But nobody picked him up anyway, so you didn't get any playing time. But that's all he was going to get, was a 6 game for domestic violence. But meanwhile, you had Martavis Bryant missed an entire season in 2016 for smoking marijuana. I mean, you're talking about Ezekiel Elliott. He only got 6 games in 2017 for his accusations. But meanwhile, you have Greg Hardy. He only got 4 games in 2015. Ben Roethlisberger in 2010, only 4. Meanwhile, players like Martavis Bryant got a whole season suspended. Now, I know obviously he couldn't control himself, but that's not the point. Calvin Ridley's getting suspended a whole season for betting on games, which if you really think about it, what's really worse? Betting on games as an NFL player or domestic violence and or sexual assault? What's worse? We should obviously use our heads here and know what the answer to that question is. But you're talking about we're getting all these season-long suspensions for substance issues. Darren Waller was suspended a whole season in 2017. You had him. You had Josh Gordon missed an entire season in 2015. Now, I'm not saying these guys were saints because they weren't. They had their issues too. But for the non-violent drug offenses, non-sexual crimes, non-sex crimes related offenses, these guys are getting harsher punishments than guys like Deshaun Watson, Ben Roethlisberger, Greg Hardy a few years back. And the NFL once again dropped the ball, especially here when you compare Deshaun Watson to Calvin Ridley. This is an ongoing history of the NFL not taking these issues seriously. They can hire all the executives. Teams can hire all these women in power. You can have these women referee games. But when it comes to them taking players, gross misconduct against women, especially when it comes sexually and physically with domestic violence and assault, players that do that oftentimes are getting lighter punishments than players who are involved in non-violent off the field offenses. What's the message there? What's the message you're sending there, huh, NFL? That if you have some star power, hey, you can maybe touch a few women inappropriately, but you're just going to get a light punishment. But if you do some take some non-violent substances that are banned from the league, commit a non-violent act by taking substance, we're going to punish you a whole season. Look, Deshaun Watson should have at minimum gotten a 1-year suspension for this. At minimum. But he's going to get 6 games. He could possibly still play in 2022. And chances are, if even more details come out, he might still have a chance at playing. Still. Meanwhile, Calvin Ridley, who betted on games, which is not okay, but he didn't do anything. He didn't sexually assault anyone. He didn't commit domestic violence, both of which are far worse acts than betting on games. But he's going to get a whole year suspension? You know what? The NFL it's always been a joke with the way they've handled these situations. Always giving players lighter punishments, whether you're talking about back with Big Ben in 2010, Deshaun Watson in 2022, Greg Hardy in 2015. And the only time they do give some serious punishments is if a video comes out, i.e. Ray Rice, or if there's so much bad publicity behind the person in a situation. That's the only time the NFL will actually step up and take these issues seriously. But it's a serious issue for the Shield. And they clearly don't take it as serious as they like to say. They like to say they're in support of women, this and that, by empowering referees, having owners empower females, all that. But the front office, clearly when it comes to crimes against women, they don't take it as serious as they should. Bottom line, it's been that way for a while, and it continues to remain that way. Compare and contrast. Take the examples I gave. You can click on the New York Times article, link in the description box, read it yourself. There is example after example after example after example showing they don't take these crimes as serious as they should. And it's a shame on the NFL for that. Shame on Roger Goodell. Shame on everyone else who works in the Shield's front office for doing it. Shame on the people they assigned to work these cases. Shame on all of them for not taking these acts as serious as they should. Shame on them for not doing so in past situations. With Winston, there's another one right there. Should have gotten a longer and more severe punishment. You're talking Jameis Winston, Ben Roethlisberger, like I've said, and all the way now to Deshaun Watson. It's just the same thing over and over again. And I'm just going to leave it at that before I ramble on too long. You guys can let me know in the comment section how you feel about the suspension. If you feel it should have been longer, and if so, what do you feel it should have been? I'll be glad to read what you guys have to say and your thoughts are about this in the comment section. I'll leave it at that. If you haven't done so already, do me a favor, drop a like to help out with the algorithm. And if you're new and you haven't subscribed, do so and hit that notification bell. Like I said, feel free to leave a comment. Let me know what your thoughts on the Deshaun Watson suspension, how you feel about it, and how you feel about the whole situation with Daryl Morey not bringing in a backup center. Do you feel he's trying to force Doc Rivers to start? Or at least play some of these younger guys? Let me know in the comment section. Most of all, have a wonderful night or day. Nikki Steve signing off, and I'll see you next time.